In this video, I want to talk about whatever lure category this is. I know that for me, I've called them the fuzzy dice. The fuzzy dice was kind of one of the originals, but just like every company does when a new technique kind of comes out or a new lure that really does well in some tournaments, everybody kind of jumps on board. And I think that a lot of anglers know about this particular style of baits. They probably even own them, but knowing how to fish them is something that's completely different and not something that's been talked about a whole lot. So in this video, we're going to talk about 3 different ways to fish this bait, as well as the tackle that you will need in order to fish it. Now, before we get into that, this is the last day of the Independence Day sale that I'm having right now over at Fin Fishing. So basically everything on the website is 15% off, whether that is a waterproof duck hat, a simple t-shirt, the USA made sun shirts, the duck shorts, everything is 15% off. So if you're looking to stock up on some fishing apparel, right now is a great time. I will leave links down below in the description. Thank you to all of you who have shopped at Fin Fishing. It is truly the best way to help support this channel, and I greatly appreciate it. All right, let's talk a little bit about the fuzzy dice. Now, the first thing I'm gonna talk about, how do you fish this bait? I think a lot of guys, like I said, get these things, and there's not really a certain way of fishing these baits, but in this video, what I want to talk about is how you can go about fishing them that are similar to lures that we already fish. For example, the first way that I fish this bait a lot is up shallow, and it's very similar to the way that I would either fish a wacky rig or a floating worm. Now, most people out there have probably fished a wacky rig, a good old wacky rigged Senko style bait. You're gonna cast that bait out. You're just gonna let that bait free fall, maybe pop it off the bottom a few times, let it free fall again, pop it off the bottom, and continue kind of that process. Well, you can work this bait in the exact same way, and that is one of the best ways to actually fish it. Anywhere that you would fish a wacky rig, just fish this kind of odd looking fuzzy dice cue ball thing in the same way. Now, the biggest difference between this and a Senko style bait is that a Senko has a lot of salt in it, it sinks, and not all of these baits out there on the market actually sink. Some of them are extremely light in weight. Like this is very, very light. There's other ones out there that are a little bit heavier, but they also may be made out of like an elastic type material where they actually float. So the biggest thing, if you want to work this kind of like a float, like a wacky worm or a floating worm, is put a little bit of weight in the bait. And I'm simply going to take a nail bait and I'm gonna shove it right through this thing. Usually like a 3/32 ounce weight is what I do. And then I'm gonna take that same wacky rig hook that I use for my Senkos and I'm gonna put it through this bait. So really, that's kind of one of the biggest ways that I fish this bait, is like a wacky rig. And like I said, also like a floating worm. One of my absolute favorite ways to fish a floating, or to fish, is a floating worm technique. You're gonna cast that bait out and you're gonna pop it just below the surface of the water. So you let this thing sink about a foot and then you're popping it just below the surface, let it sink about 6 inches, pop it just below surface. The entire time that you are fishing it that way, you are able to see it with your own eyes. So this is a very exciting way to fish. I typically going to use a little bit more robust colors, a little bit more flamboyant colors, your pinks, your chartreuses, when I am fishing it in this way. If I'm fishing it more like a wacky rig, I go with kind of your standard, green pumpkin style, or kind of your bait fish imitators like this one that I'm holding right here. But when I'm fishing it higher in the water column, right below the surface, I like those bright colors, fishing it exactly like a floating worm. Now, the next way that you can fish this bait, and something that is very, very effective, is simply putting it on a drop shot. Now, the big thing with this bait is you can't really fish it on a drop shot if you're fishing around a lot of cover. If you are fishing, around thicker grass, if you're fishing around, brush piles, stumps, anything like that, the way that you really have to rig this is you just kind of have to nose hook it. You just kind of have to simply put the hook on there. There's no real easy way of weedlessly hooking this bait besides using like a weedless wacky hook, which still isn't super effective, and I don't love that look on a drop shot. So this is limited, but if you're fishing ponds that have a mucky bottom and maybe just a little bit of snodgrass, or if you're fishing up in an area where it's just a shell bed, or maybe it's just a rock pile, something that isn't really snaggy as far as where the bait goes, this is a great way to fish it. It's simply on a drop shot. Now, when you're fishing it on a drop shot, there's no real wrong way of fishing it. I'm gonna fish it like my standard drop shot most of the time. I'm just kind of more or less just drag it across the bottom, maybe slowly, just kind of twitch that bait, just let it pulsate down there underwater. Sometimes just drop it. The big thing with it is, kind of like I've said with a lot of different baits over the years, is that the lightest drop shot weight that you can use with this bait, the more natural it is going to look. So even if you're fishing in 15, 20 foot of water, use a 1/4 ounce weight. Even if you're fishing in really shallow water, maybe 10 foot, 8 foot of water, use an 1/8 ounce weight. Use as small a drop shot weight as you can get away with. It's going to make that bait look a little bit more natural, well, a lot bit more natural, and you're gonna get more bites on it. So those are two really effective ways at fishing this bait. The third way that you can fish this bait is with like a jig head. You can actually feed it onto a jig head, fish it exactly like you would a jig head minnow, especially in conjunction with forward-facing sonar. That is another great way to fish this bait. Now, before I let you guys go, I want to talk quickly about the rod and reel combination that I have used a lot with this bait, and it's this one right here. This has become probably my favorite spinning rod this year. It's a newer series of rods that ARC came out with. It's made by it's designed by Wes Logan, a professional bass fisherman. In this specific rod, I have caught a ton of fish on this year. I like it for a number of things, but it is great when it comes to fishing these style of baits, the fuzzy dice style baits. Now, this is a 7-foot rod. It is a medium light power in a fast action. Although it does bend a little bit further down the blank, I would consider it more of a moderate fast action rod if you were to ask me. But this thing, I typically am going to use very light braid, either 8 or 10 pound test braid to a 6 or 8 pound test fluorocarbon leader. That is the way that I like to fish it. This is the rod that I'm gonna fish it on. And like I always tell you guys, if you guys are looking to get a rod or a reel, you can get 10% off over on the ARC Rods website. Just use the coupon code BFHQ, get you 10% off. So this is a great rod. The name of this rod is called the Desperation. So it's the Wes Logan series Desperation rod. It is a great all-around spinning rod. You can do a ton of your finesse techniques with it, but it is perfect for these style baits right here. So guys, let me know down below in the comments if you have any more questions about this style bait. I think I'm gonna come out with like a full in-depth underwater version of this over on Bass Fishing HQ in the coming weeks. So if you're looking for, if you want to see that, let me know as well down below. All right, don't forget to check the fin fishing gear. Blah, 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 blah. Screwing up my words. See you tomorrow.